let's find the middle of the canvas just so we're centered. So usually I just kind of make a little crosshair, make a little dot just so you know where it is, and then we can build our circle around that. We're going to do kind of a big, notice how it's kind of hard to make a circle from scratch. So I usually like spiral my hand around really loosely. You could also use a protractor or something that's shaped like a circle and then outline it if you want to get really perfect. But I don't really want to do that because it's just not what I'm in the mood to do today. And then what we're going to do is make like a rainbow and then a smiley face underneath and over. So come out to the edge, try to find like a line that goes from the center of the eye out to the edges. So you try to keep it on the same line. So if you go from the middle, come straight over out from there and straight over out this way. And you can even kind of center it between the edge of the circle and the edge of the canvas on both sides just to get some balance. And then I'm going to make from that space a rainbow, really subtle. You can make it different if you want. And notice how I cut into the circle a little bit. And then a smiley face. And then this one's going to go more under the circle. And you can sketch it loosely. And then we can make a little bit of an eyelid on top by doing a double rainbow at the top. And then we can make a little bit of a shape right here to make that be like the inside of the eye where the tissue is. And you can round that off and kind of change the corner of that just a little bit so it looks different from this side. Don't overthink it. And that's just our basic shape. Now you can also make a smaller circle inside just to give you a little bit of a guideline. Like this is going to be the pupil, this will be the iris. But a lot of this is going to get painted over and changed a bit, so don't worry about it. And then once we have this, I want to just start painting so we're not obsessing too much about the stuff we're going to paint over it, just to get some loose guidelines. And then I'm going to color in with the filbert. Now before we get into the eye, let's go ahead and play around with making different skin tones. So usually a simple way to do it, and there's lots of different ways to do this, including having some skin tone pre-mix paint already, but I'm always just working with your primaries and black and white for the sake of learning, because the more you know how to mix the colors, the easier it is for you to even work with pre-mix paints, just because you know exactly what the colors are going to do and how much of each color is in a color. And even pre-mix colors are just made from this basic, these basic colors. So I'm taking a clean filbert. This one's the number, I think 6. And then I'm going to go ahead and mix a little bit of red and yellow. Mix little bits at a time. And then a tiny bit of black. And this is going to give us a brown kind of color. Now, the more yellow I add, the more of a golden brown it's going to be. The more red I add, the more of a sienna brown it's going to be. And the less black that's in there, the lighter it's going to be. So if I want a lighter shade of brown, I would use less black and more yellow and more red. But if you want a darker shade, rather than adding more yellow and red, you're going to have more black and it will get darker. And then if you want even lighter color, you can begin to play with adding white. So if I add white to that shade of brown, then it's going to start to look more like a tan color. The more white I add, the lighter it's going to get. The more red I add, the more pink toned it's going to get. The more yellow I add, the more yellow toned it's going to get. So you kind of can adjust it to what you prefer and what you particularly want to see. And a lot of times it looks a lot lighter on the palette than it does when you put it on your canvas. Sometimes you think it's light and it's really not that light. So if you need to adjust, or if you're trying to mix your color and you're not getting it to do what you want it to do, I highly recommend cleaning your brush off and then proceeding with the color mixing. So it'll be less frustrating. And then what I want to do is go over the guiding lines And notice how my pencil that I was using is going to kind of blend into my paint, which is totally fine. That won't happen too much with a regular pencil. Depends on what you're using. And sometimes we want that. It adds to the painting. So I'm just going around the outside of the eye on the guiding lines that I made. And you can go on the inside just a bit. And now I might want this part to be a little more pinkish, so I can add more red to my tan color and more white. And then I can go in there and kind of color that in. It's going to give me a different thing. And then you can just begin to add a lot more white to the brush and go in between. It's still going to have some of that light skin color, but it's going to be lighter than the first shade you did. So you want it to be a little darker, and then we want it to get lighter as we pull out. And I'm not really trying to go for like the full face here. I just want to focus on the eye, but I want you to play with making these skin tones because it's a really fun practice to do. Making different skin tone colors. So you can be making something look darker or lighter. And you're just getting familiar with how to mix those tones. Just mix those colors. And again, I'm using, to do the lines, I used the Stabilo pencil, which is what it kind of blends into the paint, which is fine. If you don't like that, I suggest using just a regular pencil. And I'm just filling it in. And then I'm going to clean the brush because I want to fill in the white part of the eye, and I want that to be much lighter. So it's okay if it has a little bit of the color from the skin tone in it, but I want it to be much less. So I'm going to go ahead and notice how it's picking up some of the wet paint. That's totally fine. But I'm coloring in around. And I actually want a little bit of a darker color at the top of the eye. So just imagine that the eye will get a little bit of a shadow from being like the eyelid casting a shadow on the eye itself. So it shouldn't, a lot of times we think, oh, the eye is white, but really it's not, it's different shades. So that's what we're trying to represent as we paint. And then I'm going to let that dry. I'll probably pull in some more white, but I want, notice how it pulled some of the pencil color. That's good. And if it does, if you don't get that, you can do it deliberately by adding either more of that, adding a little bit more black to the skin tone to make it more gray, and adding some shading into that white part of the eye. And then I'm going to clean again because I want to go into the eye color. And I'm just going to do a blue, like kind of a blue-green eye for fun. So you can clean your brush. I'm still using the same one. And then don't worry about this part. I'm just going to paint over this. And notice how much this is kind of going to impact my paint. If you don't like what's happening with that, you can always get a towel and kind of wipe the excess colored pencil or whatever you're using. If it's interfering too much, just wipe it off. So don't worry about it. But clean and dry, and then I'm going to use the blue. And I'm going to go all the way up to the edge of my guiding line that I created. It's just the blue by itself for now, but we will get more crazy with this. Okay, so now that I've outlined it with the blue, I'm going to add white as I pull in towards the middle. So it should be lighter around the edges, or sorry, lighter in the middle and darker around the edges, whatever color you choose. So you could do any color you want. You want it to be a little darker around the edge and then lighter as you come into the middle. See how it's like dark and then it gets lighter. And then you can add a little bit of yellow and just sort of dab a little bit of that into towards the center as well. And now that we have like the base color for this, we can go ahead and use maybe a smaller brush for a second, or just a different shaped brush. So maybe I'll use a little square brush. And then I want to go in and add some more definition around the eye. So for example, I can create some different shades to put in the eye right here. I want like more of a pink color. So I'm mixing red and white. And then I'm going to go into this space right here and just add a little bit of that. I want it more pinkish right there. Hopefully you can see that come together. And then maybe even around the edges a little bit. On the bottom. So there's some different colors coming in there. You can even use some of that pink towards the top of the eyelid here. Or around the outside of the skin. The more the better. I mean, it's really fun to play with these colors. Try not to be too strict about it. And then when you want to change your color, just clean it. And I want this to dry the inside of the eye. I'm going to add a lot more to that, but you can even use your fingers. Like I kind of want to smudge that yellow in a little more, blend it out. I'm just going to tap my finger to smush that paint around. So many different things you can do. And then I'm going to do some more dark around the eye. So I'm going to use the black, maybe mixed into that brown, or use the red and the yellow, but with a lot of black, so that you have a much darker shade of brown. That's what I'm doing. No white, more black. So it's still kind of brown, but we've added more black so that it looks darker. And then I'm going to outline the eye, and I want it heavier on the top. I really want to thicken it up on this side right here. I'm kind of doing a lady's eye. I want her to have some, and then you can start to flick out some eyelashes too. Like that. You're just pulling up from that space. I'm really lightly feathering it out. So I'm just using the edge of this shader brush. It's like a square shaped brush. And I can even come down and add some of that darker color at the bottom. Just imagine like an outline. It's good for practicing like making lines and stuff. And then you can pull some bottom eyelashes, but maybe these aren't as thick. I'm just barely touching, and I'm not using a lot of paint. And then if you've been playing with that for a second, you want to try maybe a round brush, then you can go for it. Now I'm going to do more to the eye. I want to add some more dark blue. So I'm going to use the blue with just a tiny bit of black mixed in. The black goes a long way, so be careful. And then I'm going to go around the edges again. And I want my eye to go all the way up to the top of I kind of have my eye color going in there, and I want it to go, the eye color to go all the way up to where the eyelash starts. And I want it darker at the top of the eye and around the edges. And then you can pull some of that darkness in towards the center, little tiny wisps. We're going to keep it simple today, though. You could really take this far and try to make it look more realistic. We're not necessarily going for realism. You can add more black and put it around just the very itty bitty edge, like just at the edge. So you should still see it a little more heavy blue as you come towards the middle. So it's darker around the edge and it gradually gets lighter and lighter as you come towards the middle. And then you can even try using this brush with some of that dark blue black color and adding another coat to the eyelashes. So maybe you want some parts of the eyelashes to look a little darker. Try to get a few shades and test different brushes. So maybe the round brush is easier for you to do the eyelashes. So I like to invite you to experiment. It's all just an experiment. We're not really, gonna make it too serious. You can always paint over things. So this is gonna dry. And if you want to speed up the drying process, you can always use your trusty hair dryer if you have one. Just hit it for a second and it should speed up your process. So if you're having trouble with layering in the eye, I suggest doing this. I'm going to go back to my little shader brush and come back into the kind of the inside of the eye. And I want to get some more light colors. So I'm going to add more white to my pink right here. So I still kind of have like that pink color. It can even be a little bit peachy if you want. I want it really light. I want to go and add like a few almost highlights inside the white part of the eye. Really to brighten it up a little bit more. But see how I'm leaving some of the darker color in there. Don't completely get that out because we want to see that still. And you can even use some like light blue or light purple. So if I mix a little bit of blue into my pink and add a lot of white, it becomes like a light purple color. This is a fun shadow color that's a little bit less realistic than using these earthy tones, but you could still use them, and that might be something that feels more like your style. So you could use more of a light or dark purples for shadows. So we have red, blue. Warmer shade is going to be more red. And then you can go in and I want to make sure there's shadow towards the top here. And a little bit around the edge of the bottom too. So you can use that purple. See if you like the way that looks. It's so much fun to experiment with your colors. And the more different shades you have, the more interesting it's going to look. So keep all that in mind. And then just clean your brush as you want to add more. So I'm going to add more different shades of blue to the eye. I'm going to use some blue and white, maybe just a little bit of yellow. Maybe make it a little lighter than what I have in here so far. And then I can go in and start to make little bursts coming out from the middle. Just little lines. So we can start to do that. Looks kind of cool. And you can play with softening your shadow around the edge too. So if it feels like it got too dark, you can add more light blue in back over the black around the edge. And that'll soften it. So that's the benefit of letting your paint dry. It's easier to paint over and adjust. And then you want to go, clean your brush if you want to change colors, and then just go lighter and lighter. Maybe get some more yellow tones in there if you want it to be more green. And if you feel like things are not blending or like looking weird, just add more of your base color, like more closer to what you did on your first layer, and then paint over and blend out. You can always adjust. So do a little dance. Maybe going back and forth between your darker eye colors and lighter colors until you're seeing it looking the way you want. And you can keep it really simple. As long as you see 3 different shades, you're good. You don't have to get really intricate with the brush strokes in here, but it can be fun to play with. So just do whatever feels fun for you. You can even do like little dabs instead of these lines. So it can be a completely different motion of the brush. Really anything you want. I'm just playing around with different colors. You can add more blue back in, more white, more yellow. Just play with those 3 colors. I can even use a little bit of the blue, light blue, as a shadow color in the eye. So I can pull some right by the purple like this. Why not? If it feels a little harsh, clean your brush and add more white to it while it's wet. You gotta act fast with acrylics because they dry kind of fast. And sometimes you want that blending to happen while the paint is still wet. It's easier to push it around and blend it out that way. And I can go into like this light peach. I'm adding some like highlight colors. And I want to create like a lip of the eye. So I'm going to go right above the eyelashes here and create a little bit of a highlight on the bottom, kind of highlighting this part. And then you can come back into like your darker color again. You can clean your brush or not. Sometimes people don't clean their brush to just keep it a little more loose. And then I'm just sort of underlining that. I'm doing just some more outlining around the eye, more layers, my darker colors. And then you can do more eyelashes. So this is, we're just going to bounce around for a second with what we've already done so that you can add what you want to see. And if things look too harsh or you want to change things, like I kind of feel like that bottom part of the line got a little too harsh. So I can always go in with more of a peachy color or brown color and soften. It's just endless. And it might come in with like an itty bitty. You can use like an itty bitty brush, super tiny, to do some eyelashes. And then I suggest adding a little bit of water into your dark color, whether you're using pure black or you're using like a dark brown, which is just a little bit of red and yellow added in. I'm going to do a little bit of yellow and red added in so it's not too harsh. Maybe you use an itty bitty brush. And I want some of those eyelashes to be like super long and some to be shorter because your eyelashes aren't all the same length. I'm preferring the square or shader brush because it holds more paint. But I like to show you because I know some people prefer the round, the tiny round brushes. It's not my preference. And then as you move across, you want eyelashes to go this way, and then as you go this way, they go the other way. Remember, mix in a little bit of water if your paint is really thick and hard to flow, like as you go like this. I'm giving them like mega eyelashes. I like eyelashes. And plus it's fun to paint this. And then as I go in right here, they're gonna get a little thinner, a little more sparse. And I kind of want to carve into my eye a little bit. So you can carve into your eye with your eyelashes and your eyeliner. That's one fun thing about that. And then make sure you still have your shading. So whether it's like some purple paint, blue, could be so many things. But it's starting to come together. It looks kind of cool. Now I'm going to add the pupil, and I'll use my filbert for that because it has like a round top to it, so it might help make the circle a little easier. And I'm just going to use the black. And you're going to make a circle in the middle of your iris. Now, the bigger you make it, the more dilated the eye will look. So kind of decide. If you make it too small, it kind of looks freaked out. But if you make it way too big, then you lose like the color. But if you have any mess ups inside your eye and you want to cover them, this is a good way to do it. Just paint the pupil over it. And I'm just doing all these circles freehand, so they're not going to be perfect. And that's okay. And then you can even get a little bit of that blue-black. So if I add blue, and then you can pull a little bit of that dark out from the center. It's a little bit. Just really lightly feathering it out, but I added some blue so that it wouldn't be too harsh. Now, if it's coming out too harsh, clean your brush. Maybe even switch to an itty bitty tiny brush. Use mostly blue and then try. And if that might give you a more subtle effect. So know how delicate you are. If you're really heavy-handed, sometimes using the smaller brush helps keep you in line. If you're able to do it really delicately, then you're probably good to just use a bigger brush. Just know yourself. Know thyself. That's why some things work for some people and not others. It's just a matter of figuring out what works for you. And then if you did that and then you lost a lot of the dark or the light colors, clean your brush and go back to like your light blue or your light green. And just sort of lug that back in. Don't lose your light colors all the way. It looks so much better when you add the pupil. And then again, I'm going to keep it simple today, so I don't want to go too crazy. There's so much touching up you can do. Like I can add more eyelashes. Notice I could use a smaller brush. Just little adjustments can be made. And then when you're ready, you're going to add your highlight over your pupil. I like to use a bigger brush for this because it allows me to get more of a loose brush stroke. So I'm going to use my square shader, which is not huge, but it's not tiny either. It's kind of medium. And we're going to use our white or light blue. Let's use light blue first. We'll do a couple shades. So with the light blue, I'm going to come in really light. I can add some to the actual eye, like towards the bottom. Little tiny kind of things. Maybe just little streaks pulling through. Let your hand go kind of wild. And then maybe like right here, I just do a dash. And then another like squiggle. You know, it gives me a highlight. And then I could do it with pure white again, right over the top of that. Boom. And then some little dabs or squiggles. And then if you don't like the way something turned out, like I feel like this line got a little crazy, I can come back to my darker blue and just dab over that line to soften it in. But I like the way some of it turned out, so I want to keep some of it. So you can always tone down your highlights a bit with those darker colors. And you can add some more highlights, maybe like inside the white part of the eye. Like if it got too muddy with your shadows, just take some pure white, but only right towards these little corners, and do some dabs of white. You can even do a little bit of highlighting on the eyelashes. So if they got a little thick and separated, you can add some white on the tops of them, just a little bit. May help them look a little thinner, or just soften them if they look too bold. So may or may not want to do that. It's up to you. Maybe you like the way they look, so then just leave them alone. I want to soften some of mine.